Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Unconventional Attorney Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Small, and I am the Unconventional Attorney. Today, I'm excited to bring you another Attorney X episode. If you are unfamiliar with this, I am basically interviewing anonymously law firm owners from around the globe to find out what's working for them, the kind of revenue that they're really making, the kind of challenges that they're really facing, and uncovering all of the things that they are afraid to expose out there in the real world under their own names. Now, the only way that I can continue to have these interviews is for law firm owners just like you to come on the show. We all get to learn from the information and the experiences we share, and this is my call to action for you to come and join me as an Attorney X guest. It's very simple. It's 20 minutes. And if you come on, I give you a free t-shirt that you can't get anywhere else. So if you walk around and you see people wearing Attorney X t-shirts, it's because they have taken the plunge and they are Attorney X alumni. To sign up is very simple. All you have to do is go to theunconventionalattorney.com/Attorney X. You can pick a date and time that work for you, and when that date and time come, we'll chat. Okay, so that's theunconventionalattorney.com/Attorney X. Go and schedule your date today so we can keep up this really cool deal that we've got going on. All right, now let's get into the show. Hello, friends, and welcome to another Attorney X interview. Today, as you can probably guess, I've got Attorney X. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
As a reminder to you and the audience, I ask the same questions to every guest on every show and promise anonymity so we can get the raw truth about you and your law firm. The goal is for all of us to learn from each other by sharing what's really happening inside our firms. You up for that?
You bet, man.
Awesome. All right, let's dive in. Question number one. How old are you?
56.
All right, a young, spry 56. Are you married?
I am.
Do you have kids?
I have one daughter.
Okay. How old is she?
She's 32, and I have two grandchildren.
Awesome. Grandkids are fun because you can give them back, right?
You bet. Absolutely.
Nice. How long have you been practicing law?
Since 1999.
Okay. And I always ask, this is my questions I always ask everybody this, but what's like did you know you always wanted to be a lawyer? Like, how did you get to even get to law school? Like, what's sort of like your origin story?
No, I didn't always know that I wanted to be a lawyer. Law is my second profession. My first profession was that as a healthcare provider. In the 1990s, I was starting to get stale with healthcare, and I lived in the same town with a law school, and I had a number of buddies that were lawyers. So I said, well, let me stick my foot into this and let me give it a try. And so I started law school part-time, but that lasted for one semester, and then I ended up going full-time.
Okay, awesome. And what is your primary area of practice?
Currently, it's civil litigation. I do a lot of federal court litigation, but I am transitioning to estate planning and elder law. Okay.
We can just sort of talk about both all the way through if you want.
Sure.
Or not, either one. What got you into that? What got you into the civil litigation part to begin with?
Well, being a healthcare provider, I was sort of tangentially involved with the law. I did a lot of forensic type work. I did expert witness work, both for the plaintiff and defense. When I was a healthcare provider, I was an expert witness for the U.S. attorney in some healthcare fraud cases. So, I always went towards the civil law. I never really did any criminal law except for maybe helping some folks out with some trials when there were some healthcare issues. And I never really have done anything like divorce or bankruptcy or any other type of law except for civil law.
Right. And when you say civil law, is this mostly like personal injury for the most part?
Well, it's personal injury, but it's civil litigation too. A lot of civil rights, a lot of
Okay.
healthcare litigation. So not only injury.
Got it. Okay, cool. And that sort of just, and I think you already kind of said this, but that the reason you sort of picked that is because it kind of stemmed off of what you're already doing anyway. So it kind of allowed you to mix your interests of medicine and law. Good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I first went out into practice, I actually had two suites across the hall from each other, and I still had my healthcare practice for a number of years, and my law practice was sort of a hobby practice at that point in time.
That's awesome. I just picture you like wearing a lab coat, and like you wear the lab coat, you take it off and you like walk across the hall, and now you're like just in a suit coat and you
Some
keep
days
going
it
back.
was like that.
That's awesome. That'd be hilarious. That's cool. That's pretty interesting. And did you, okay. And so you get out of law school, did you initially open your own law firm like right away? Like how'd that work?
Yes. So, I've been on both sides of the coin. When I graduated law school in November of 1999, when I was sworn in, I just put my shingle out right across the hall. So I got another suite and I went into practice for myself.
And did you, was that the intent the whole time? Walk me through sort of your thought process or just how that all went down.
Well, there was this chatty girl in law school, and it was really annoying to a lot of folks, but she said one thing that was profound. She said, you really don't get along with other folks. You really need to be self-employed. and, and she was sort of right. But, you know, I worked for myself as a healthcare provider. I've tried to be in partnerships and I've tried to work with other outfits and it just doesn't work. She's right. I don't get along with other folks.
Okay. Yep. And so when you opened, did you have did you have that other office pretty quickly? I'm trying to ask sort of like a funding question. Did you start with a certain amount of money that were allocated to these things? Like what was that money situation like at the very beginning?
So when I went to law school, I told my wife that we'll only use the money that I made from forensic work to pay for law school. But then after the first semester of law school, I ended up getting a free ride. So I didn't have to put that money into practice. And so I used my healthcare practice to fund my startup. So I didn't have to go out and borrow any money or anything along those lines.
Okay. That's awesome. Do you remember how you got your first client?
Yes, I remember my first client. My first client was sent to me from another lawyer in town who is a big medical malpractice lawyer. And when I was in law school, I did some work with him and I actually tried a case with him. And so he had a slip and fall case with a broken ankle in the parking lot of a theater. And that was my first case.
Okay, awesome. You guys just had a relationship before? He knew that you had opened your firm and just decided to send it to you? Okay, cool.
Yep. And because it really wasn't, he did cases that were worth hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And this was really just a 5-figure case.
Yep.
So.
Awesome. And did you, so I'm guessing you do a mix of flat fee billing and hourly billing, just depending on the type of case?
Yeah. So contingency fee, which would be, and I do some hourly work on some of the cases that I do.
Okay, and then all right. So you open your firm 1999, and you're working this kind of practice, and then you decide to transition. Like what happened?
There's a lot more in between.
Tell me some more in between. Then tell me some more. Walk me through it. What happened?
So then, I'm 4 or 5 years into practice and we decide that we don't want to live in the cold weather that we were living in. And we decided that we wanted to move down to Florida. So right. I picked up I closed my offices and I moved to Florida, and then I went and worked for the man.
Yep. Who was the man in this case? The government in some way?
No, the man was a large insurance defense firm in Central Florida.
Okay.
There were about 90 lawyers, And, so I did learn Florida practice, and I did, learn a lot during those years. And then I left there about 4 or 5 years later, and then I went back there after a 6-month hiatus.
Okay.
And then I went to work for a couple of relatively large plaintiffs firms. And I was, the last firm that I worked at was, I managed a satellite office. But then in 2014, I said, I just really can't work for folks.
Right.
And so at that point in time, I had a friend of mine in law school, and my wife and he were relatively close. She did some work for him, and his partner died, and I was sort of talked into going into practice with him back up north. So I went into a partnership with him back up north, but then I still also had started a private practice in Florida.
Okay. Did you initially sort of take those just like associate jobs or whatever you want to call them, just sort of for the consistency of income and is there a reason why you didn't open a firm down there right away in Florida, down south?
Well, yes, I wanted the consistent income. I was sort of a little burnt out on the stuff that I was doing, and they actually paid me relatively well.
Right. Cool. Well, and then what sparked you deciding to open you just figured again, you figured out, hey, I don't like to work with people, or I don't like to work under people, probably.
Right. So there was one thing that came to a head, which was very, very difficult. And I felt like the firm did not back me up because they'd rather go ahead and have and get the significant fee that they were going to get from the case instead of backing me up. And I wanted to dump the case. And at that point in time, I said, enough is enough. I'm not going to do this again. Got it.
And when you opened this new one, how did you get clients? So I guess, how did you get clients with this new firm? Because I guess before you probably had some local contacts and things like that. How did you start this new one?
So in the partnership that I had up north, my partner was pretty established in the criminal law area. And so, he was like, I'm the grand poobah in this area. We'll get plenty of work and this, that, and the other thing. And so he was sort of generating the work, but it wasn't really the quality of work that I wanted, which sort of caused us to end up breaking up a number of years later. But in Florida, I had a pretty good reputation already. I did a lot of lecturing for healthcare providers, and I had some niche type of practice areas. So I would get referrals and get cases from the internet. So that's sort of how I got to work.
Got it. Okay. And so you break up with your partner up north, you still keep your office up there?
Yeah. So, I didn't just break up. I mean, I broke up with my partner last year. So we were together, almost 5 years. And so I offered to stay in the building that I was in, but that didn't happen. So then I went and got another building a few miles away.
So what was that experience like? So I guess, let me ask you this. Let me ask it in a different way. Yeah. Let me ask you this, just to get your experience for people that are thinking about having partners. If you could have maybe asked some questions or learned something about that situation beforehand, would you have done anything differently? Does that make sense? It's hard to do partnerships, but if you could have done something differently to either make it work potentially, or to sort of identify that this won't work earlier, is there anything that you would suggest that people sort of do as part of that process?
Yeah, you need to listen to your gut. I knew it wasn't going to work from before I went into it. I saw red flags.
Got it.
I saw problems, but my wife was sort of like, oh, it's just the way this person is, and and this, that, and the other thing. And she sort of thought I was making more of a mountain out of a molehill than it really was, until she started living it and seeing it. So I would have listened to my gut at that point in time, and it just, I should have listened to my gut.
Right. Yep. And then okay, so sort of like similar track, but different area. Having the two places to work, like how logistically did you do that? Like, how did it work for you?
So people would think that I'd spend my time in the winter in Florida and in the summer up north, but it just didn't work that way. I actually flopped back, like twice a month, back and forth from, but the truth is, years ago, having a multi-state practice could never be done. But now, the state of Indiana is all electronic filing, federal courts all electronic filing, Florida is all electronic filing. If you have a hearing in Florida that's under 15 minutes and you request by phone, the judge has to give it to you by phone. You know what I mean? So it's just nice. So the technology nowadays just makes it so the practice of law can be done multi-jurisdictional. You can attend court hearings by court call and things along those lines. This would never have been done in 2000 or 2005. Right. It's only the last few years. So that's sort of, a really good thing.
Is there any reason, so I'm just going to ask this blunt question, but why both? Like, why not just pick one and do one? Is there any particular reason?
Well, because I want to be with my family up north, and I don't want to freeze my butt off all winter up north. So it was it was a family consideration. I mean, this all happened 5 years ago with the birth of my grandson, and I didn't want to be the grandfather that they just come to Disney World to see. That's why. Totally
get that. And plus, if you have the two offices, everything is sort of a business expense, at least to travel. Right.
Well, yeah, that's what folks say, but you got to make money in order to write things off. Yeah. So listen, it's really a commitment. You need two places to live. I have two places to live. We sold a big house and we downsized. You got to have multiple cars, multiple insurances, multiple office fees. So everything is exponential in that respect.
Yep. But you get to do what you want to do, which is part of the whole deal. Right? That's the biggest thing.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's cool. All right. Okay. So, do you have anybody working for you? Do you have staff at all?
Yeah. So I guess you would say I have two full-time equivalents, because I have 1 3/4 up north, and I have a half down in Florida. So most all the files and everything and mail I route through the office up north. So, sort of, we try to make that like a one-stop mail shop.
Yep.
And things along those lines.
Who was the first person that you hired? What was the position?
You probably call the person a paralegal, legal assistant.
How'd you find them?
So they initially came with me from when I broke up with my partner, and then I ended up firing everybody.
Nice.
And then because they brought the whole energy from the other place. And then the person who was managing my healthcare office 20 years ago ended up coming on board. And so she had to learn the legal space, but she was really good with people. And, so that was more important.
When it comes to hiring, do you have any tips, suggestions, strategies, things that have worked for you or that you sort of try to employ when you're looking for people?
I think I'm horrible at hiring people. I've not.
I think that's probably the first step for everyone is to admit that they suck at hiring, because I don't know if anybody's actually that good at it.
Yeah, and so even when I worked at the big firm, I mean, I would sometimes, some years I would go through 5 or 6 assistants, and maybe I was just a terror. I don't get along with people, but it's so hard. I think that you can probably teach skills, and the most important part is somebody. We're in the customer service business. You need somebody that's excited, somebody that's good on the phone, and somebody that will show up and at least be committed to the job.
Yeah.
You can teach somebody to type, you can teach somebody to put something into the computer, but you need somebody with that type of personality.
Do you have you ever done anything to sort of like to test that, or do you just kind of try to intuitively feel that out while you're looking for people?
Are you talking about doing like Myers-Briggs and things along those lines?
Well, anything. Yeah, some of that. If you that can be part of it. Just what is there anything that you do specifically to try to find those skills?
I haven't. I've put all the hiring off on my wife, and that way I can complain, confess at her.
I love that. I love that. All right, that's cool. Okay. Now let's talk about this transition, right? So you decided to sort of move away a little bit from the civil litigation stuff. What talk to us about that?
Well, when you do litigation, even though you try to coordinate your life, you really can't, because you're always at the whim of the court, because the cases that you do, I mean, you're on a court docket with a court with 10, 12 other cases, and it's Thursday, and then you're said, oh, you're picking a jury on Monday. And I know you did criminal law, and it's a lot different, and try to get your ducks in a row doing civil law with getting subpoenas. Because when you're defending a criminal case, I mean, pretty much all you're doing is cross-examining most of the state's witnesses. So it's a little different. Mm-hmm. So you really don't have your life to yourself. I mean, with all the deadlines and all the stress. And so I just want to wind out of that type of work. So when I work for the next 10 or 15 years, or as long as I'm going to work, I can end up controlling my time a little bit better. Yeah.
So was that the only factor that led you sort of to estate planning, or was there anything else that drew you to it?
Well, I've done a lot of litigation regarding estates and trusts and guardianships over the years. And I've just seen how everything has gone wrong, and that's why it ends up on my doorstep. So I bring the insight of how things go wrong into it. So I think I can, sort of help people. And as I'm getting older, I'm dealing with the stuff with my parents, I'm dealing with the stuff with folks around me, and, people are just like coming to me. So I figured I really need to learn how to do this, and I think I can help people.
Yeah. So so for those people that are thinking about switching your practice area to anything, what was that process like for you? Like, you're still sort of transitioning, and I'm part of that is having to probably close out the active cases that you have on the civil litigation side, but are you doing anything strategically or just sort of sequentially to sort of make this transition? Like
I'm learning the area of law. I've been taking on matters in this area because I do have a number of clients, and over the years, folks have asked me, "Can you help me with this?" And so now I let folks know that I am helping. I've started doing a lot of content in that area of law, and you are helping me put out my content. Mm-hmm. I have a new website that's going to be launching in the next week, which will just be based on that area of the law. And then we're just going to transition, and I don't know if I'll always 100% transition out of the way, but I want this to be a majority of my practice area.
Right. You want to be able to pick and choose those other cases that you want to work on, sort of the ones that are meaningful. Right. Basically.
Well, yeah, and not only that, sometimes when I look, I'm a solo practitioner, and I don't use funding companies to fund my cases. So if you were to look at the money that I have on the streets right now at no interest loans, I probably have $200,000 out in costs in cases that are just sitting there interest free. So, and you have those issues.
Yeah, that's crazy. How are you Because this is, I think, a big hurdle that people are getting over when they're trying to transition. But what have you done to sort of learn the practice area? What have you done?
So this last year, I bought a year's pass to CLE, and I went to pretty much every CLE in the state, wills and trusts. And right now I'm also looking at a program that I'm thinking about going into, which is sort of an intensive program in order to, kickstart the area of practice. So you have to put money, so it's either you're going to put time or money, or you're going to put both in, no matter what you do.
Are you feeling more and more confident about what you're doing? And I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, are these things helping? Is there anything that most people are always concerned about what they don't know, and I've been there, but I'm just curious about how you are working through that sort of, that little voice in your brain that messes everything up,
Well, I don't really have that issue.
Nice. Good.
When I first went into practice, what I did was I got a group of mentors, who were, specialists in what they did, even though they couldn't call themselves specialists. So if I have an issue, I have no problem getting on the phone. I know a lot of people, and I'll have them look at it. I think I know, how to issue spot, and I know the issues. So, I know how to think like a lawyer. We all know how to think like lawyers. So right. I wouldn't, all this, it's a bunch of fear. It's just a bunch of bull crap when people say they can't do it.
Yep. I agree 100%. So changing gears just a little bit. And this is going to be, it's going to be mostly on your civil practice side, but what was your approximate 2018 revenue?
Well, my 2018 is when I split up. It was just in the $300,000 range, and this year it's going to be in the $400,000 range.
Hey, for being a solo, that's legit. You can probably eat just fine.
No, I can eat.
Yeah, for sure. How many hours a week do you work on average?
Yeah, I probably work 40 to 50 hours a week if you're talking about legal work, not counting the other garbage.
Yeah. Yep. And is that just the time, just because your cases are sort of time intensive, the ones that you're working on?
Yeah. I mean, so I have to do a lot of writing sometimes. You're defending summary judgments, You're filing summary judgments. So you do have to put in a lot of time.
Yep. And I guess for right now, let's talk about civil litigation. Where do most of your clients come from in that area?
So, most of my civil rights clients come from other lawyers or the internet. Most of my auto type cases come from sometimes healthcare providers or the internet. Yep. And then some of my governmental defense work comes from either the county attorney or things along those lines.
When you talk about the internet, is this like search? Is it paid stuff? Is there any sort of a?
It's search. I don't do SEM. I don't do pay-per-click.
Okay. Yep. Awesome. What is your biggest challenge right now?
Well, my biggest challenge is, really trying to manage two different locations, because, even though you try to put protocols and policies in place, every time I pick up a file, there's still something that's not done. And then the second biggest issue is, this transitioning, getting my feet underneath me as I'm transitioning my practice.
How are you handling that? Are you blocking out time for each? Do you have any specific strategy, or are you just handling things as they come up? What's that look like?
I'm handling things as they come up.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah. I'm not blocking out time. I'm trying to do content pretty much every day.
Yep.
But, I usually do that at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And then what's the goals for 2020? What's a good 2020 look like for you?
Well, a good 2020, my goal for 2020 is to have about 1/3 of my practice by October of 2020 to be estate planning and elder care,
Yep.
elder law. And then for 2021, for it to be north of 50% of my practice.
Okay, perfect. I think you totally can do that. It's easy. Well, it's not easy, but it's doable. It's right. Easy is a relative word. Easy, but hard at the same time. Okay. Now's the advice portion of our talk. If you, let's talk about, if you could go back and like talk to yourself in 1989 when you're about to, open your firm and start doing your thing, if you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you have told yourself to do at that time?
Stick with what you're doing. Stay by yourself. Don't think that you need to go and join a bigger organization because they don't do it any better than you do. And there's something said for having to restart and reinvent yourself 2 or 3 times throughout your practice.
Yeah.
So have patience.
Yep. That's perfect. That's great advice. And then what sort of generally, now for like all of the law firm owners that are out there, what advice do you have for them generally? Just, like a success tip or something that, works for you something that you think about from a mindset perspective. What do you got for us?
Well, I think that probably the number one thing, it's really not a practice thing. It's a personal thing. You have to take care of yourself. You have to make time to exercise, to spend time with your family, to the law is going to be there. Your clients are going to be there. I sit in depositions all the time and people talk about past cases that they've had. They can't remember the lawyer's name. Don't lose sweat over those clients because they're not going to remember you half the time in 5 years or 10 years. The thing that matters is your reputation, because the lawyers that you're going to run into are going to be the lawyers that you see over and over and over, and the clients just come and go. So don't let them, push you past where you feel you need to be, whether it's based on your morals or your values. Don't lose sleep over them because they're really not worth it.
Yeah. Love it. Great advice. Great advice. All right. That's it. Thank you so much for your time and your transparency, and welcome to the Attorney X Alumni Association.
When do I get my shirt?
The shirt's coming, by the way. No one has a shirt yet, because just so everyone knows, when you come on the show, you get a shirt. I'm designing a custom logo for it, so that way everybody knows, like, I've been on the show before. But it's not, the logo's not done yet. So it's almost done. I've been working on it for like 3 weeks or so to get it looking good. So it's coming soon for you and for all those other Attorney X alumni that are listening. Like, where's my shirt too? It's coming. I promise.
Great.
All right. Thanks so much.
Yep. Ciao.
That's a wrap, everybody. Thanks again for listening. I really appreciate your time and attention. And a reminder, if you want to keep the Attorney X series going, there's only one way to do that: to get more of you on the show. To schedule a time to talk with me, talk about your firm anonymously, and get that free t-shirt, go to theunconventionalattorney.com/attorneyx. That's theunconventionalattorney.com/attorneyx. Can't wait to have you on the show. See ya.